Member Cook Centre North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. People across the province are struggling to find housing. Reggie Beale, who works full-time in Sackville, has spoken publicly about his struggle to find housing for himself and his 3 children, as the house they rent is being sold. Ashley Legier and her young child are in the same situation. She works supporting people to find housing, and now finds herself trying to do the same thing for her family. To quote Reggie, "The housing crisis is urgent and needs to be addressed, and not in a 5-year or a 7-year plan. But, Mr. Speaker, that is the plan. And at the end of it, in 2029, there will only be a total of 1,262 more affordable housing units, and in some cases, it's not even a new unit being created, just rent supplements. The wait list is 7,000 as it stands. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to know what the Premier is going to do to make sure people like Reggie and Ashley are not moving into tents, are not moving into their cars or couches or onto the street. What will he do to make sure people are not unhoused?
Minister of Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, thank you once again. And Mr. Speaker, we're well aware that there's a situation here in the province of New Brunswick that needs to be addressed, and we've been working on it. Mr. Speaker, I could go from place to place to place and tell you of the good work that's being done. Let's talk about the City of Moncton for a second, because that's in my backyard. And we went forward, this government went forward with an initiative coupled with the municipality and the federal government called Rising Tides. Mr. Speaker, Rising Tides is a project that has helped women that are exposed to violence. They've helped people that are homeless. They've helped people that are in a flux situation, such as some of the people we all know about in all our ridings right across the province of New Brunswick. Mr. Speaker, I could go to the City of Fredericton. We could talk about 12 neighbours. Mr. Speaker, once again, an individual who's had a vision, with the assistance of the Government of New Brunswick and the federal government, working together with the municipalities to find the solution. We can talk about the John Howard Society, and I could go on and on.
The member for Member Cook Centre North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, but that is not enough. People are becoming unhoused. I've been hearing from tenants in my riding and across the province about landlords who are attempting to get around the rent cap legislation, and this proposed law is full of loopholes. It is well known now that if you are looking to cash in on increasing market rents, you just need to evict your tenants under the guise of major renovations, also known as renoviction, and just bring new tenants in at a higher rent or convert the unit to Airbnbs, taking them out of the rental market. Despite what the Minister of Service New Brunswick says, we have heard enough stories of entire apartment buildings being evicted under the guise of renovations to know that this is a widespread problem. And the Minister made it clear in speaking to the media yesterday she isn't going to do anything to solve this problem. So my question to the Premier is does he think this is a problem, and what is he going to do about rent evictions?
The Minister of Service New Brunswick.
Thank you for the question and for bringing this up. And I'd like to just separate rent evictions from terminations. They are 2 totally separate issues, Mr. Speaker. And despite what the reporters put in the paper that evictions are up, they are not. Termination is another situation altogether, which we are absolutely addressing as discussed in length yesterday. The Residential Tenancies Tribunal is making it very clear, and please, for every MLA in this room, encourage a call to the Residential Tenancies Tribunal day 1 that any of these tenants are notified of any reason to terminate. They only have 15 days from the date that they're notified to reach out to the Residential Tenancies Tribunal to open a file. Whether they call, they email, show up at any Service New Brunswick location, have a friend, a neighbour, a son, a daughter. We are there to help, but we need to hear from you.
Time, Minister. The member for Member Cook Centre North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rent evictions, there are not enough protections against rent evictions, and yes, they are different from evictions. They are pretending they're not evictions, but there's not enough protection for tenants in this province against rent evictions, and this needs to be fixed. And how is this going to be fixed? People have been becoming unhoused, been experiencing rent evictions for years, and I remember during the pandemic, the Premier in press conferences saying that he didn't really think there was a housing crisis. Well, there is. There are people moving their children into cars because they have nowhere else to go. And people with children are being discriminated against, and they're not protected in the province. They go to the Residential Tenancies Tribunal, and they're told, go file a human rights complaint. Much good that does for them. So I want to know, people like Reggie and Ashley who can't find housing for them and their children, what will the Premier do to make sure that they have affordable housing, that everyone has housing in this province?
Minister of Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, according to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, New Brunswick has a record number of housing units under construction right now in 2022. Mr. Speaker, and according to Robert Jones, CBC, he has the numbers. Never fight with Robert Jones when it comes to numbers. 5,193 new housing units at various stages of constructions are during the first 3 months of 2022. And that includes, Mr. Speaker, all the spectrum, whether it's apartments, whether it's affordable housing, whether it's other single units. And Mr. Speaker, we're answering the call, we're answering the need. When I look at the housing budget that we put in place and the number of various components that we're using, such as rents up, such as new builds, such as working with nonprofits, such as working with the developers, Mr. Speaker, we know that there's a situation and a tight market.
Time, Minister. Member for West Leeds, Chilhowee.
Ma question est pour le ministre de